And also latest net migration figures. They have just come out and they have hit 672,000 in the year to June 2023. Do you remember the net migration in the tens of thousands pledges? Yeah, those are long gone. Well, my question to you today is about those migration figures. I want to just know your reaction. Those latest figures, it was 606,000 last year to June 2022. This year, it's 672,000. We were told last year was a blip, weren't we? Well, give us a call on 0344 499 1000 to have yours say. You can text on 87222, or you can get in touch on X at TalkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. Well, joining me right now to run through all of the top stories is writer and commentator Candice Holsworth. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Haven't seen you for a few weeks. Great to have you on the show. It's really interesting, actually, because those net migration figures, this is all the latest news we've got this morning, but they do tie in, do they not, to the autumn statement. We played it on our show yesterday. And the headlines are quite interesting in the newspapers today and on all the websites. This whole, biggest tax cut in decades since the 80s, but also the highest tax burden, reaching 37.7% of GDP since the Second World War. Both are true at the same time. Tories and the Tory newspapers very much pushing the £450 on average cut to most people's tax take. National insurance is a tax, basically, by cutting, for most people, 27 million workers, but also lots of self-employed people also getting some benefits from their national insurance contributions being cut. But that cut from 12% to 10%. That's, £450. That is not to be sniffed at, except more and more people are going to be dragged into higher tax thresholds. I mean, we're looking at, 4 million more people paying the 20% rate of tax, 3 million more people paying the 40% rate of tax, and even another 400,000, I think, paying the 45% top rate that's tax. Those are supposed to be the multi-millionaire rich people. So although things are better today, well, they will be in January when these things come through, than they were, yesterday, we're still poorer than we were last year, the year before that, year before that.
I mean, I found it all massively underwhelming. I just think that
Jeremy Hunt, underwhelming? I'm shocked and disappointed in you.
I mean, I just, I was like, are the headlines in a different reality to me? I mean, that is not going to touch sides. With everything going up, I mean, that's barely going to help anybody. And like you said, the big problem of fiscal drag. I mean, it's basically this tax cut is caught in a vortex of cost of living plus fiscal drag. Yeah. It's not going to make material difference to anyone's lives.
Well, this is the thing. This is like someone, a mugger coming up to you on the street, stealing 100 quid from you and then saying, let me give you a tenner back. And you go, yeah, I'm £10 up. You're not. You're 90 quid down.
I know. Well, for some people, I mean, because we have the tax system that we have where the high earners get really, really penalised. I mean, for some people, they're just going to be worse off. I mean, that's the one problem we have in this country is people don't want higher salaries because they don't want to get punished by the tax system, whereas in America, there's so much more wealth creation.
Yeah, that said, look, I would like all taxes to come down, wouldn't that be great? But I'd also like really good public services. I do wonder about an awful lot of the people, and I include Labour in this, and most of the media commentators and people who were clamouring for more lockdowns, more furlough, give more help to people, spend more on the NHS, spend more on education, spend more on more on benefits, more on everything. Where on earth do they think the money is coming from for that? I mean, there were people like me at the time saying, I really welcomed things like the furlough scheme when we had the first lockdown.
Yeah.
But, I really also supported Rishi Sunak when he was trying for us not to be, as he was Chancellor, to be locked down again on the basis of the cost. He could look at the numbers and go, this is going to break the bank, as it has done. And when Labour say, well, we're in the worst situation we've ever been in, we'd still have had the Ukraine war. They would still have supported having sanctions on Russia and all of that led to, and they wanted more lockdown sooner and longer.
Yeah.
So they wanted more help for people that was given. So we would be in a worse situation if they were in. But I do not understand these people who were saying, oh, we're just in a terrible state. Yeah. Where did you think we were going to get the money from? Oh, that magic money tree was going to be sprouting in the garden again, was it?
But the growth of the public sector and all these services, fine, but they have to be paid for through taxes. Are we okay with that? Are we okay with
a debate about it? Yeah.
Yes, a greater proportion of our income going on funding the public sector? And I don't know if we can be a very wealthy per capita country where, GDP per capita, a wealthy country where it's all shared out, people are making good money, if the private sector is basically funding the ever-growing public sector.
Well, especially with inefficiencies in the public sector, where we see the private sector has been growing more productive, and massively more, certainly since the lockdowns. You know, people have streamlined their mean and diet machines, but the public sector has got more and more bloated. You know, there is more and more money going in. That said, one of the key little rinky-dink things in Jeremy Hunt's statement yesterday was, oh, we've got fiscal headroom. No, we don't. There isn't any extra money. People have been paying more tax into the Treasury because their wages have gone up, because inflation's gone up.
Yes.
In fact, they've actually got less money in real terms. I mean, this is all... It's all just gobbledygook nonsense designed to fool people. To think they're better. People aren't stupid.
No.
People know if they are better off or not better off at the end of the week. They know whether there's nothing left in the bank account. They know they're treating voters as fools is so offensive. And by the way, politicians have been doing this for a very long time on both sides as well. But one of the crucial things was, he was saying, well, I've got this extra money, so I'm going to give some of it away in a tax benefit to people. All very well and good. But ignoring the fact that the cost due to inflation, which meant that he's got that extra tax in, that has actually also put up costs for public sector. So he's not increasing what the various, other than health and defence are getting. So a school that's got to use the same amount of money with high inflation to pay for teachers' salaries, which have gone up, to pay heating, which has gone up, for food, which has gone up, every building work in the school, which has gone up massively. They are basically having to do the same with less money.
Yes, exactly.
We are going to we're going to pay higher taxes overall, and we're going to have underfunded public services, which is mind-blowing. That said, we are, relatively speaking, in Western Europe, a low-tax economy, which is bizarre. But maybe if we had the sort of services, Norway has, or France, you want to get an appointment with a consultant in the health service in France, you just call up. You've got it within a couple of days. You ain't waiting 6 months or a year. Maybe if you had those services, people wouldn't mind.
Well, that's true, actually. If people felt they were getting excellent services in return for their money, they'd be less resentful. But I don't think people feel that. I mean, when you look at things like bin collection, for instance, they drive everybody mad.
Do not get me started.
Yes.
We could do the whole show on that.
I know. It's like it's the bane of every person's existence. And you see your council tax bill go up and you're just enraged by it.
What am I getting for this? Yes, exactly. Well, look, that ties in, of course, with also an announcement this morning, early hours this morning, the latest Ofgem price cap. This is for January. It's going up by 5%. The average home, again, most people don't live in the average home, is going to go up by £94. It's another 94 quid that is going to cost you. And again, if you've got more kids, or perhaps you work from home, perhaps you've got elderly, elderly or disabled people in the family, you need to have the heating on more. Well, I'm afraid, you're going to see your bills going up by a lot more than that.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is why this tax cut is so puny. It's just going to keep getting eaten up by higher and higher and higher prices. And like you say, if your children are in childcare or they're in school or whatever, and prices have to be raised there as well, you're never going to be better off. I mean, the situation we're in a very poor situation where people are having to accept lower and lower standards of living.
Which is also, by the way, what the net zero policies are geared around. They are predicated on us all having worse lives.
Yeah.
I mean, that's having less, buying less, affording less, being colder, just having a miserable life. They are... That is what they're predicated on, and that is official government policy. So I don't know why we're surprised.
Well, they don't like growth. I mean, a lot of them will say that.
They talk a good...
They will say that our problem is growth. That's why we have such a bad problem with the environment, is our endless addiction to growth. That's
our endless
what they'll
addiction
say.
to having a better life. Oh, what horrible people we are. One thing they do like growth in, though, migrants.
Oh, yes,
OK, now this has been something of a debate in the jungle. I'm a celebrity jungle with Nigel Farage. We'll come to that. The latest migration figures were out just 45 minutes ago, and they show, now last year, the figures are from the Office for National Statistics to June. So to June 2022, remember that big figure, 606,000 more people arriving in the country than left the country. I think it was 1.2 million more people arrived in the country, but of course, certain other people also leave the country. The latest figures, these often get revised and changed, is 672,000 more people coming to live and work in this country to June 2023 than leaving the country. This after the Office for Budget Responsibility, they gave their predictions for the economy yesterday ahead of the autumn statement. But one of their predictions was the number of people who are going to be in the country, working out these figures. And it was that over the next 5 years, there will be an extra 1.5 million people in the country. Now, bearing in mind, we've already had an extra 10 million people coming into the country since basically year 2000. So another 1.5 million on top of that. This, again, with government after government elected and the Brexit referendum, based on people saying, we're not anti-migrant, we're not anti-migration 100%, no one coming in the country, but we need to cut the numbers to a manageable level. 672,000 extra people arriving in the country in the last year. Is that a manageable level of migrants? By the way, those are the legal ones.
Yeah. Well, the big problem is this is so multifactorial. What's driving this? I mean, one of the big drivers is the fact that we've got so much dysfunction in our own labour market. So a lot of these people are coming to fill roles in social care and the health service. And one of the reasons for that is poor planning years ago, where we didn't train enough doctors and nurses, and now we're reaping
planning by the government.
Yes, now
decision making by the government,
and that's now borne bitter fruit. And then in the social care sector, I mean, a lot of people who maybe would have done those jobs are now doing jobs in the supermarkets that are better paid, or possibly a lot of people are on out-of-work benefits who could be working. And this is what is going on. Those jobs need to be filled, especially with an ageing population, so people are being brought in to fill them. But we've got to understand why we're not able to do it with people who are already here.
I mean, and again, actually contained within those ONS figures on net migration, we see the number of visas. They say largely this is people arriving on visas and who are extending their visas, choosing to stay here. One big set of visas that did go up, though, is in 2022, we saw visas for care workers stood at 2,000. In the last year, it was 60,000.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
as you say, we can't get people in. But these people are very low paid. Now, we could argue this is a very important job. I'm an aunt in a care home, seeing how hard these people work. It's a really tough job.
It is.
But unfortunately, it doesn't involve an awful lot of qualification and skills. Actually, you know, that's the reality.
Yes.
Therefore, it's not a very well-paid job, often just minimum wage. But you know, we haven't got enough people home going to do it, but you bring those people in, they need somewhere to live, their children need to go to school, they use doctors, they have to get on public transport, or their cars are on the road. And that's an extra 60,000 people and needing all of that. They are, no matter how hard they work and what great people they may be, they aren't going to be net contributors to our economy.
Yeah, the problem is exactly what you said. You're not going to get extra GPs, you're not going to get extra schools, there's no extra houses. It's such an issue. But I do think that the people who make these policies are very far removed from the reality on the ground. I mean, they're not the ones who are struggling to find a place for their children at a school, not being able to get a GP
They move into the catchment
appointment.
area of a good school, or they pay for a good school.
Well, that's what it's determined by, right? So the good schools that all the middle-class people want to get their kids into, those are the most expensive houses. So it always gets sorted by money in the end.